We have a lot of fingers being pointed at each other, Republicans, Democrats, talking about the state of the economy and where we are in our fiscal policy. Well, guess what? We are in the beginning of a new fiscal year. We have a continuing resolution that passed that keeps us funded because September the 30th, midnight last night, was the end of it. Where are we, though? Where do we stand economically? Susan Tanaka is Vice President, Research of the Peterson Foundation, which was put together to increase public awareness of the nature and urgency of key fiscal challenges, and she joins us this morning. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you, Tim. Happy to be here.
So where are we? I mean, we've got the new fiscal year, and a lot of people don't really understand exactly what that means. A fiscal year, it's for tax purposes, I guess, or whatever. Spending ends September the 30th in the federal government. It begins October the 1st. We don't have a budget, but yet we have a spending plan that I guess is going to carry us through. We don't have a couple of laws were not passed, like, for example, a long-term farming bill, which is also a food bill, didn't get through. There were a few others, 5-year spending plans and so on. If we had a report card, how would you grade where we are right now?
Well, I'd say that we're not doing very well. We have, under the Congress has to pass a budget every year, and this year they didn't pass one. And so that means that we don't really have a congressional plan for what we should do with our fiscal affairs.
So typically now the budget would normally come, right, the White House presents a possibility or a range of things that they would like to see implemented in a budget, some sort of, I guess, if not a directive, at least a roadmap, if you will. The House and Senate will act. The House this year passed a budget independent of whatever came from the White House. The Senate didn't get it done. So what is, for people who don't understand how this works, how is the government still working then?
Well, for one thing, 2/3 of what the government does every year, excluding interest costs on our debt, are what we call entitlement or mandatory programs. These are programs that go ahead and operate irregardless of what Congress does. So if Congress has to actually act to change those programs. 1/3 of the budget then is subject to annual review and annual funding. And it's that 1/3 that they rolled up into the continuing resolution that you mentioned earlier. The 2/3 of it is still operating without interruption. So in some ways, passing a budget each year is not essential for the government to keep operating, but it's tremendously inefficient and it's very disruptive. And if you believe in good government and having programs operate in a sort of consistent and stable manner, not having a budget and not knowing how many people you're going to have to make a program run is pretty disruptive.
When do we know how much we took in taxes compared to the previous fiscal year, and to see if we're actually higher or lower? Is that something that's an ongoing process?
That's an ongoing process, and they're tallying up the numbers right now to figure out what the final year-end results were for the year that ended yesterday. But we expect that there's going to be at least $1 trillion gap between the money that went out of the Treasury and the money that came in. That makes 4 straight years in a row when we had deficits over $1 trillion.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, one of the things we're looking at is what might happen in January. We're already hearing by what reports are saying is that, for example, the payroll tax holiday is going to go away. I was wondering, and I'm not sure if you've crunched the numbers along these lines, but suppose if we were to actually see, forget about the economic consequences of this, if we were to actually see the Bush tax cuts expire and to see the sequestration cuts take effect, has anyone gamed out or looked at that to see what the effect would be on our budget deficit?
Well, we know that relative to the year that just ended, the deficit next year would be about $500 billion smaller, which sounds like good news because the government would be borrowing less, and that means interest payments in the future would be lower and our debt would be lower and all sorts of good things would happen, you'd think, except that the economy happens to be in a weak state right now, and if the government were to drop its activity that quickly, that fast, many economists believe that it would throw us into recession early next year.
And that means that you would be paying more in unemployment, which would be going out to people who are no longer working and paying the kind of taxes that would be contributing to the revenue. And so we see another spiral downward. I guess that's the conventional wisdom on that.
That's the conventional wisdom, because all in all, what we really need in order to, at least in the short term, close the budget gap is to get the economy moving again. There's no cure that is as powerful as a growing and healthy economy, because when people are working, when businesses are investing, when people are buying things, the revenue begins to flow into the Treasury no matter what. And that's what we need to do, is we need to restore the health of the economy so that things can start functioning again. People feel confident. They're willing to go on with their lives. And then everything will start to mend. And we've seen a slow turnaround. It has been slow. And we expect that it would continue the economy would continue to get better. But if the government were to do something precipitous, like allow all the tax cuts to expire, take away all the benefits that are scheduled to expire at the end of this year and the beginning of next year, that would have a dampening effect on the economy, and that would not be helpful. So what we really need to do is to take cautious action now, to put a plan in place that will begin to tighten up the government's finances once that economy starts growing again.
Susan Tanaka is with us, Vice President of Research, the Peterson Foundation, as we discuss the beginning. It's the new fiscal year. I didn't see the New Year's Eve party last night, by the way. I didn't see I didn't hear the noisemakers or anything like that. I guess there was nothing. We didn't have the old man going out and the baby in the diaper coming in. But here we are on the new fiscal year, and it's not much to celebrate. How much, Susan, does the federal government's budget and the kind of money coming in and going out, how much does that affect the states? Because clearly we hear about a lot of states are still struggling with their tax revenues, and they are required to balance the budget every year. How much are the two related?
Well, they're related in the sense that the states get a lot of money from the federal government. There are grant programs that flow down to the states, the biggest of which is Medicaid, which helps states take care of low-income people and help their health care needs. There are other programs like transportation. There are community development programs. There are all sorts of other kinds of programs that flow down to the state. And, of course, what the federal government does affects the economy, and you get the same kind of dynamics at the state level. If the economy is not healthy, it's harder for states to make their budgets balance as well.
Is there any sense, and I'm not sure if the Peterson Foundation either takes a position or has analyzed this, but the Federal Reserve has recently said that it will once again be buying bonds, and that will inject some more money into the economy, supposedly freeing up more capital for investment and other things. Is there any analysis of that?
We have not conducted any analysis of what the Fed actions will do, but we do know that unless the actors in the economy, whether it's consumers or it's business people, feel confident that there's a reason to invest and to buy things, the economy will continue to be sluggish. So one thing we need to do is restore that confidence, and a way to restore that confidence is to show all the voters, all the people in the United States, as well as people around the world, that the United States is able to get its fiscal house in order and come together on a plan that will put our budget ultimately on a sustainable course. There are
some economists who think that the fiscal house in order is important, but the most important thing, first of all, is if you get the economy moving. It might mean spending a lot more money. That's what some would say. Others would say, well, you've got to get the budget deficit under control, and that means austerity. But then if you're too austere, you wind up slowing down the economy. What's the answer to that dilemma?
Well, as Alice Rivlin, founding director of CBO and former director of OMB and vice chairman of the Fed, says, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Mm-hmm. We can do both. We don't have to choose. We can put a plan in place that will take care of our budget once the economy is strong, and take action in the short term, make sure that we do not harm this recovery that looks like it's starting to take off.
Well, Susan Tanaka, we appreciate your spending time with us this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.